If you hang around long enough in the music industry, you'll develop a fair number of relationships, both professional and personal. But it's the people you meet, do ministry with, and ultimately share a common legacy with that end up being the people you're most excited to sit down with in the years that follow. Michael O'Brien and I were label mates at Benson Records, and we spent time together on the CCM trail for a number of years, and it's always time well spent. And we were just talking, it's been like 6 years since we sat down and had lunch together. It just feels like it was like a couple years ago. But we love getting together and catching up on each other's lives, and there's no better way to do that than with all of our listeners right here with us. So, Michael, welcome to the One Degree Podcast, man. I'm excited to catch up with you today.
Brother Andy, it is kind of surreal in a sense because I was such a For Him huge fan back when y'all, before you were actually even For Him. I went to a concert in California, and you guys were just about to break off.
So we were still with Truth then.
Yeah, yeah.
We're out in California.
It was San Diego, and Mark was saying, "Yeah, we're about to leave. They're going to be looking for 4 new guys." Because I was like a Truth wannabe. It's
Yeah.
like I never made it. It just wasn't what the Lord wanted for my life. So,
Did you audition?
I did back, believe it or not, when Mike Eldred was in the group in 1986.
That's whose place I took.
I know.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. So we were like battling neck and neck and didn't even know it. That's
I don't know
crazy,
what.
man.
Yeah, it was just one of those situations. It just didn't happen, and I ended up going with a group called the Heritage Singers, which
Oh
is
yeah.
kind of like Truth without vibrato. So
Did you
great
have to
tone.
did you have to pay your way into Heritage Singers? Was it like Continental Singers?
No, actually, they
No.
they paid you, and we got to stay in hotels.
Oh gosh, that's not the Truth experience. No, Truth experience. I think my first year there, I made $20 a week, and
Yes,
and stayed in host homes. Of course, you know that whole journey.
heard all about it through all the
Oh
guys,
yeah,
my friends that used to be in Truth.
yeah, yeah. I'm sure you travel with a lot of ex-Truth people. I'm thinking back, to your new song days even, and
Oh
um,
yeah,
yeah. So yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, but gosh, I can't believe we had that close of a connection even way back
yeah,
there.
so crazy. 86, yes, when I tried
Wow.
out, 86 or 87, somewhere in there.
So were you living in San Diego in Southern California at the
So
time?
yeah, at the time, my wife and we had just finished being with the Heritage Singers. I went into a small church to be a young adult pastor slash music minister slash youth pastor. It's a really small church,
Yeah,
and
got to do it all.
yeah, so I was there for a year and a half, and that's when we kind of made the decision after Truth had kind of come through and gone, and we decided to move to Nashville and just try to give it a shot. We were going to give it 2 years, and if nothing happened in 2 years, then I was going to try to figure out what else I was going to do with my life. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, that's a story of just about every musician. I mean, even in Truth, I was there. I got in the group in '87, and
yeah,
then around, man, sometime in late '89, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I remember the Gaither Vocal Band was looking for a new lead singer or another
yeah,
singer that we were all trying out for. I mean, we all were, trying to cut real quick demo tapes to send to Bill, and that was just one of those things. You're like, well, it's a group. I could probably do that, and yeah, I
yeah,
failed at that. They didn't choose me, didn't choose anybody else in our group, but yeah, you're kind of like, all right, well, I've given this a couple years. Now what? Like, I don't really have any other skill set. At least you were working in a church at the time. You could go back to that, but
yeah,
yeah, that was
yeah.
miles ahead of where I was.
Well, it was one of those things where I was just not very fulfilled. I mean, working in a church, as you well know, there's just a lot of politics involved, and
Yeah.
you're trying to make people happy, and there's always going to be somebody that's not happy, and I was a new Christian too. I just come
Uh-huh.
out of was playing in piano bars, and I was a bartender, and so I left that world because I radically got saved in 1987, and then the next thing you know, I'm singing in this group, surrounded by other Christians, and I'm like, I don't even know Daniel in the Lion's Den.
Well, hang on a second. You said that you auditioned for Truth in '86.
Uh-huh.
Was that before you got saved?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
What's interesting is that I loved Christian music, but I had no relationship with Christ. In other words, I just loved the music. I loved truth music. I loved, back, if you go back into the 70s, David Meese,
Yeah.
I would Green, all these guys I was listening to. Andre Crouch. Just to God be the glory. I had Christian friends giving me Christian music and I was listening to it, but I was far from the Lord.
Yeah.
So
So did you grow up in church? Was it, like,
not really. I went to the Baptist church when we moved to Lafayette, Louisiana. We lived in Miami at the time. I was 12 or 13, introduced to the Bible, but I didn't. I joined the church because my family joined. None of us actually joined because we loved Jesus. We just joined to be members of a church.
huh?
So it was a very interesting. My dad was an atheist. He died an atheist. So it was very interesting to me, my journey, and even with Christian music, why I was so drawn to it. But I was also drawn to, Chicago, Toto. I had a lot of different kinds of music I listened to, but I did love the Christian music. I did.
Wow, that's really interesting. It seems like God had even planted some of those seeds in your heart before you chose to follow him. I think that's really
exactly
cool.
right. Yeah.
Wow.
Providence
Wow.
of God.
Yeah. So you get to Nashville in what, 80,
91.
91. Okay.
Yeah.
So you spent how long with the Heritage Singers?
A year with them and then a year and a half at this church.
Okay.
And
And then,
then,
and then in 91, did you show up in Nashville with a demo tape? Did you have, did you have
I
a
had a,
custom project?
I had a cassette, Andy. It was a really nice cassette.
Do you still have it? Surely you still have that somewhere.
Yeah, it's tucked away somewhere.
Yeah.
It's the only one I have of it. Matter of fact, I think my wife, we went to a Larnell Harris concert in California, and she gave my cassette to Larnell. And one day, I was like, years later, I was sitting with Larnell in a car, and I was like, "Hey, do you remember this young lady giving you a cassette?" And he's like, "No, I don't remember." You would just throw that stuff away when people give it to him.
You know that. When you get to a certain point in your career that the cassette tapes, it hits you at the autograph table, or
Oh man,
somebody hands it to you as you're walking in, getting back on the bus. And
yeah.
so funny story for us. That happened to us. I think we were still in Truth, maybe, and For Him was about to take off, or it was the very first year for him. I can't remember which one, but we were at Liberty University, and a couple of young dudes came up and gave us a cassette tape and said, "Hey, we're rappers. We would love for you to hear our music." And we put it on for about 10 seconds and laughed our rear ends off. That was DC Talk.
DC Talk, yes.
Oh yeah, and we're like, "Nah, nobody's ever going to be into this." That's yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. Oh, Travis Cottrell gave me his cassette.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, this is bad. He was like a big fan of mine and gave me this cassette. And I actually I didn't email him. I don't know if I sent him something saying, "Hey, this is really good." And but I don't remember if anything ever came out of that. Just some encouragement.
Yeah.
But
he's had a nice career.
Yeah, he's done pretty well.
So you get to Nashville in 91, then what? Like
So I became a waiter in a restaurant, of course, the cooker.
Oh, I probably met you there.
Parkway Cooker, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we were there all the time.
And then Reggie Ham, who was also a waiter at that time, and Reggie and I kind of struck up a friendship because we both were miserable. Because he's working, he doesn't want to work there. I don't want to work there. He's a songwriter. I'm a songwriter artist. So we start kind of writing together. He gets a deal with Sean McSpadden, and that's a whole other long story. I actually was trying to get that, and I brought in these songs, and then Sean was like, "Hey, who's this Reggie Ham guy?" Because he was writing all the lyrics.
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh, he's my lyricist." He goes, "Yeah." He says, "I'd like to meet that guy." And he met Reggie. He signed Reggie. He did not sign me. And and I was like, "Oh well, there again, the Lord was in it all." Because about a year later, in '93, 2 years almost to the week that we moved there, I signed a publishing deal with Metagreen Music.
Oh yeah.
And I was with them for 3 or 4 years, writing songs for artists. Trying to.
Mm-hmm.
I think
who was your first big cut?
East to West.
Oh yeah, Jay and
Prince of Peace. Yeah, that
Okay.
was their first single that actually went. It was a number one single. So
Wow.
it was a Reggie Ham, Michael O'Brien song.
Wow. That's crazy. And
Yeah.
then when did you sign your first artist deal?
So in '94, Troy Van Leer, I'm sure you
Oh
know
yeah, no
him.
Troy. Sure.
He heard me because I was, sending all these demos in. He was hearing my voice, and then he saw me at church sing one time, and he called me on the phone. They actually didn't want to sign me. They wanted to give me like a developmental deal,
Uh-huh.
and so I refused. I had somebody tell me say no. I wanted to say yes so bad,
You're like,
and
guys, I've been developing for like the last 10 years here.
so I said no. And then like a week later, they called me back. They're like, "We want to sign you." And
Good
so
move.
they signed me in '94. I was out on the road with Twyla Paris at that point, playing keyboards.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you ran into a lot of old Truth people. In fact, I just saw a
David,
picture. I just saw a
yeah,
picture online just a few minutes ago before we started this, and it was Twyla and Clay Cross
yep.
and Phil
Phil Keg,
Kagi. Yep. And
that
then
was-
the band was Eddie Seidenkrantz on keys, Dana Capolino on guitar,
yeah,
Mike Childers on drums.
Dave
Um,
Cleveland,
yep.
and I was auxiliary keys. I'm in that picture. Yeah,
Oh,
so
wow, that's crazy.
yeah, crazy, crazy times. But
Man.
it was fun, and it was a great way to kick off being with Twyla because she was so humble.
Yeah.
Um, that I was just like, wow, just being out. And she had just won Female Artist of the Year, and she just was so calm about it all. Like, yeah, it's not a big deal. And it really actually made an impact on my life because
Mm.
I realized, there are people in it, and they're not in it just to get a Dove Award. They're in it for different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. There was a group of, I think back to some of the people that really made an impact on me in that way that you just described. And I think about people like Twyla, Steve Green. My
Yeah,
wife and I were just talking about him today, and just the maturity and just the he was just Jesus, man. He just,
it's
that dude
amazing.
was just so kind and but also, he wasn't gonna let you get away with anything. I mean, he's gonna tell you the truth about
Yeah,
life and where you're heading.
yeah, he
Uh,
knew the word, man. He just knows the word so well, and that
yeah,
was for me also somebody that really inspired me
yeah,
to want to go deeper. Yeah.
yeah. So you sign your deal in '94 and
Yep.
make your first record. Who produced your first record?
Paul Mills and Brian Lennox.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's a good crew.
who's gone on. Brian died a couple of years ago,
Yeah,
um, but Paul and I still, after all these years, 30 years, still work together. Um, he's an incredible talent, and
hmm
so and a true brother in the Lord. But yeah, they did a great job. As a matter of fact, quick story: it was a Benson Spectacular Night at GMA, and I think I sang two songs. Nothing's gonna turn me around if ever I forget. And somebody said that you made like a beeline backstage, and you did because I met you back there, and I was already a huge fan of you. You didn't even know it. And you said you encouraged me, like, dude, that was unbelievable. I don't remember exactly what you said. All I know is that I was just like, oh my gosh, Andy Crispin just came back from for him. And I was telling my wife, I was just trying to process it all. It was just like, this is not even, I feel like I'm living a dream here.
Oh man,
Anyway, it was a really cool moment. And
wow.
I
I
never really
don't.
got,
No offense, but I honestly I don't remember that. I'm
yeah,
glad I did. And I
yeah,
will
me
say this.
too.
I will say this about me. I don't give those away. Like I don't. And if something like really moves me or I'm just like stunned by somebody's presentation, I will make an effort to
Yeah,
just go, wow, that
you
was
did.
great.
And
Wow,
it made an impact. So
wow.
that's all right that you don't remember it. I just recently turned 50 about 8 years ago, and I just realized, being 58, almost 59 now, it's you just forget stuff. You just
Yeah.
don't remember.
That's one thing I love about these conversations is reminding each other of these moments that we may have forgotten about.
Yeah,
That's and I think that was so important back then for us to really root each other on and because
yeah.
there could be a sense of competition
Oh
or
yeah,
you felt like the marketplace was really small, so you had to get what was yours and you had to hold on to it, and those were obviously short-sighted
yeah,
ideas and mentalities of, we were younger and all trying to prove ourselves and make our way. But I'm just grateful for the friendships that lasted over time, because you do get to a certain point in
Yeah,
your career and in your life where you realize it really is just about the relationships.
yeah,
It's the career can come and go, and you're really not in charge of it anyway. You can't
right,
force people to love your music or buy your product or come to your concerts. You can just
exactly right.
do what's in front of you, and hopefully, make some really good friends along the way.
That's interesting because I never really ever viewed anybody that was a group as competition, but I used to always like look at a male artist and think, oh man. And I was sitting down with Greg Long one day at Cracker Barrel, and I was opening my heart to Greg, saying, "Man, I do struggle. That's why I want to get to eat with you, get to know you better, so we'd be friends." And I said, do you have that problem?" And Greg looked at me, he goes, "Yeah, no, I've never had that problem before, and I don't really struggle." And I was like, "Oh
Greg,
my gosh, just opened
Greg,
myself up."
oh my gosh, he's a riot, man.
He's a hoot, man. He
Yeah,
is.
and I don't. Yeah, he probably was telling the truth.
No, he was. He was.
Yeah.
I mean, he just totally said, "Yeah, I never really had that problem." My dad kind of instilled in me, you know, not to worry about all that stuff. So,
Who are your friends in Nashville during that time? Like, who did you hang out with and have community with?
I mean, Reggie was pretty big because we did a lot of riding together, and so I hung with him a lot. Um, Chris Thomason,
Hmm.
uh, producer at the time. Chris Rice,
Oh yeah.
he was in a Bible study that I was in. See, they kind of introduced me to all these truth people. At that point, Lisa Piper, who was actually Lisa Cochran, Paul
Hmm.
Cochran, just a bunch of ex-truth people who lived, and there was this core of people, and we would all get together and hang out, and I was just like, how am I even getting to do this? And it was only because of Chris, because he's the one, he was going to produce my record. This was early on when we first moved there, and that's how we kind of got to get in this circle. But Tim Marshall and
Yeah.
Joyce,
Uh-huh.
they got married, and Joyce was my booking agent, and Tim was just a dear friend of mine, and they were like our best friends, and we started having kids. They were at our birthday parties. It was, yeah, small world, but mostly ex-truth people.
Wow.
So
Well, yeah, that's one of the things is you can't tell the story of Christian music without truth. I mean, that was such a big. I mean, they Jody McBrayer was just on the podcast, and we talked about how we used to call truth Christian music boot camp.
yeah,
And Roger Breland never really liked that. But it's true, and it wasn't just the vocalist that ended up in Nashville. It was all the players
yeah,
and sound techs and lighting techs and bus drivers, and I mean it was Nashville Christian. The
so
Christian
many.
music scene in Nashville was populated with ex Truth. Okay, we'll get off of that for now. I want to go back to your career and your
Okay.
solo career.
Yeah.
Um, you know, tell me just a little bit of what your journey was like, with your initial deal at Benson and how that went for the first few records.
I mean, I had minimal success. I mean, I did have number ones. I think I had like 8 number ones on radio at
That's
that,
great.
over 3
Yeah.
to 4 year period of time.
Hmm.
I was traveling and opening up for all these different groups, Mark Lauer, Stephen Curtis Chapman. Never got to open up for you guys, but always wanted to. Point of Grace. It was just this machine. I feel like it was a machine, and they knew
Yeah.
what they needed to do. So you could get up for New Artist of the Year, and then I was up for New Artist of the Year and got to sing on the show,
Yeah. Who won that
and
year?
Jars of Clay.
Oh gosh, yeah, you weren't going to beat them.
Yeah, Mark Harris
Nobody
said,
was.
yeah, he had made some kind of funny remark about if the Lord had even run, Jars of Clay was going to win.
That's true. Probably
So
true.
in '98, I finished my third project, and there's a lot of changes. At that time, I had 8 A&Rs.
Oh
They had,
wow.
Benson was going through a lot.
Wow.
The presidents changed. I think
Hmm.
you guys were soon on your way off
Hmm.
to Washington or whatever.
Yeah.
And they released the song "Let There Be Light," and it just tanked. And in the words of Brian Duncan, I was on the pinnacle of my decline. and I played golf with Brian Duncan later on when I was a new song. So in '99, what am I going to do? I don't have a record label. Nobody's really interested. Grant Cunningham was at Sparrow, but he knew that I didn't sell enough to be able to be one of their artists. And so it was kind of like, what am I going to do? Next thing you know, Russ Lee is leaving New Song. I had opened up for New Song that first 95 year, 80 concerts, got to know Eddie.
Yeah.
And so I got the call from Eddie. It's a summer jam. And he said, hey, I want you to come out. You know, you can sing, but can you give an altar call? And I was like, well, I've done it before, so I'm happy to give it a shot. And he's like, well, come on out. So I came out, and my audition was not my voice. My audition was the altar call. And there was about 5,000 people there that night. And I just kind of shared my testimony in about 15 minutes. And I think like 700 people came forward.
Wow.
And then after that night, it was like, yeah, you're what we're looking for. So I pretty much started just traveling with New Song. We started working on a new record. It's the one that had Christmas Shoes on it as a bonus track.
Yeah.
And Red Letter Day and all these songs I ended up singing. And
That was a huge record.
yeah, it was a big record, sold a lot. And Chris Harris was producing some of it. And another guy, Brian Tankersley, who passed away,
yeah,
he produced some. And so it had some really good radio success. And then the next thing you know, we're making Christmas Shoes, a Christmas record. And so that kind of took off for like 6 years, but nobody really knew that my marriage was on the brink of divorce.
Oh, wow.
We had had our fourth child and in 99, and my wife was bipolar, going through more depression than the manic. And I was on the road 250, at least a year. If I wasn't on the road, I was in the studio recording. So I was just away. My kids didn't miss me. I was always on the bus. Oh, where's Daddy? Daddy's on the bus. And so I'm living the dream, and my family's falling apart at home. And so just weighing that out, you think, oh, my calling is whatever my calling is, it's my job. It's got to be my job. Well, first and foremost, your job is your family.
Yeah, that's right.
How do you weigh that out?
That's
Spiritually,
right.
you need to love your wife as Christ of the church. You raise your up kids. And so I was struggling for years over this, and finally just got convicted. I had hidden sin that nobody knew about. And I confessed it not only to my wife, for the Lord. I was reading the word. I was in accountability groups. it was just a difficult season of my life. And that's why I love Ephesians chapter 2, where it says, but God being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you've been saved. And he raised us up with him, and he seated us with him in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. And it talks about the grace of God right after that. And man, I'm telling you, Andy, it was like I knew exactly what I needed to do. I needed to leave the group. I needed to call my own schedule. And this was right after the Rescue DVD and the CD had come out, and it was exploding. It was on Integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I told Eddie, I got to go. And he goes, what? And I said, I got to go. He goes, wait a minute. We just recorded this brand new CD. We got a number one single out. And what are you doing? And I said, my family needs me. I need to get home.
Was there a person in your life that kind of called you on it, that was close to you, that said, hey, your house is on fire, you need to do something about it?
The accountability group, which was a bunch of men, and we were doing biblical counseling. But I would say my pastor was a part of that. I was going to a church called New Song at the time. And
get away from it.
Yeah. And just men in my life who were calling me on stuff and like, man, Michael, you seem like very self-driven. And I was like, yeah, I guess I am. And, marriage is about dying to self. It's about thinking, considering others more important than yourself. And it's not like, I can be honest with you, Andy, I had a situation where I was actually working on a project, a love song record to honor my wife and our relationship. And I had Columbia Records and Warner Brother Records. It was not a Christian record. It was just a kind of a sappy love song, Michael Bublé kind of a record. And there was this carrot being dangled out in front of me. And I don't even know why I was even considering it, because they were talking about me going out opening up for Norah Jones. So I'm going to go back to the same life that I was trying to get out of. So I stepped out of New Song with no job, with no booking agent, with nothing. I was completely, and when I stepped out, everything fell to the wayside. There was nothing on the table. It was just me and a bunch of songs. And so Brian Lennox and I came together, and I raised support. I raised $90,000 to do this project.
Wow, which is a lot of money back then.
A lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money today, but especially back then.
And I was able to do the project. And next thing you know, Family Life Today, Billy Graham Association. I just started sharing my story, and they're like, would you mind doing a special on national television?
And were you ready to do that? I mean, having just walked through that season in your life, were you ready to share all of that? And
Heidi and I were ready at that point. It had been
Yeah.
over a year, and God had done a lot of healing in our marriage, and we were kind of walking it out. 2004 was actually starting really getting a lot better, but this is 2006. So it just took a while for me to get out of New Song because I didn't want to leave them hanging.
yeah,
So yeah, it opened up a lot of amazing opportunities for us to actually pour into couples and tell them our story and how God had saved our marriage and what it looked like. And so yeah, it was God's timing, and we just did it by ourselves. We didn't have a record label, and I mean, it did really, really well, and had a distributor. It was in Targets and all these different places. And for an indie project, it was pretty successful.
wow, wow,
Yeah.
that's really cool. How, man, you talk about the grace and mercy of God. It's not just that God is, He doesn't just forgive you and restore you, but He's also got something for you.
Mm.
That if you'll take a step of faith and just go, hey, I got to figure this out. I've got to take care of my family. I've got to get this right. I've got to be repentant and get to the other side of this. And
Yeah.
God won't typically, the people that I know and the situations I've even been through, God's typically not just like, yeah, great, thanks for doing all that. Now you're just going to go over here and starve. He does. He's so gracious to have something for you and to sustain you as you move into this next season of your life. So that was 2006. Now
Yeah.
you're probably just as busy as you ever were with opportunities to share your story and your new music.
Yeah, actually, even over the last it's been 16 years since I've left New Song, 16, 17 now. And even these last 5 years I've been more busy than I ever have been. And I can only attribute that to, once again, this God's sustaining grace in my life. That, I'm an itinerant music minister. I do conferences. I do all these different things, but just trying to be faithful with the things that God has given me in the relationship that He is. I bet my dog's about to bark.
No, that's okay. If you knew how many dogs barked on this podcast, you'd be like, come on, buddy, tell me what you got.
Well, it's about to happen. But all that to say, I just can't believe after this amount of time. So I just celebrated 28 years in full-time ministry, but I started in 88. So that's 35 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's an awful long time. And thanks. I'm just very grateful to still be able to do it,
But isn't that cool though? I've experienced this as well, that, when you're first starting out, you can just see that one thing, right? I have to make a record. Yeah. I have to get a deal, and I have to make a record, and that's it. And if that doesn't happen, I don't know what I'm going to do. And then when it does happen, you go, I have to hold on to this. Like, this is who I am. And if I don't have this, I'm a failure, and, I have to start all over again. And you get to our age, I'm 57, and, I get to this point in my career where I realize how many tools I do have that God has helped me put in my tool belt. And
absolutely,
the opportunities that are out there for guys like us is pretty mind blowing. And I have a lot of friends and a lot of older worship pastors that I mentor and consult with that are starting to panic at a certain age, whether it be in their late 30s, early 40s, even moving into their 50s, just going, this is all I've done my whole life. And at some point I'm going to be put out to pasture and nobody's going to want me anymore. And a lot of that, in my opinion, is just mindset. It's thinking that God's calling and God's faithfulness has a shelf life, and it's just not true. And, did we make all the right decisions early in our career? Did we, could we have set ourselves up a little better professionally to be where we are now? Well, of course, if we had perfect hindsight and could see the future, yeah, we would have set ourselves up for some different things at the time in our lives. But God knew. God always has a place for men and women that He's gifted and called to have opportunities if they'll just take them and not stress out about it. And it's easier said than done, but I just love hearing your story because it mirrors mine as far as not having the same career you had back in the 90s, but yet now you're busier than ever doing all of these things that God has, can we say, surprised you with, because you wouldn't have pictured this 30 years ago, right? There's no way.
I get surprised every time I get an email asking me to come, and it doesn't matter, as you would know, it doesn't matter if it's I'm singing in front of 50 people or if I'm singing in front of 500 or 5,000. I'm like, wow, I get to do this. I get to minister. I can, I know God's word, so I can lead people in worship to Him. And there's not like an agenda per se that, I don't go to I don't even have what I call record sales. I just have a table where you can get some streaming. I don't go there because I don't want to think about it. I just want to be available. And how do I minister to the people that God has brought out to this concert or this church service? And I'm getting to meet a lot of great people. A lot of my work is at Billy Graham Association. They have a place called The Cove.
Yeah.
And it's just a great, they bring pastors in, they minister to them, they bring the military in. And so I'll do like 12 or 13 things a year there and meet so many people. And the next thing you know, they're like, hey, would you come to my church? And it's just kind of like, it's just ministry. My wife used to say this all the time: ministry happens. You don't have to make it happen.
Right.
A lot of people are like, I got to make this, I got to do this, that thing we were talking about earlier. It just literally happens when you start having conversations and talking about the Lord and what He's doing in your life. And so it's been really amazing to watch and see. So,
well, I want to ask this question because this is the same story for so many of us. I sat down with Clay Cross. We had the same conversation. Jody McBrayer, same conversation. Greg and Jana Long, same conversation. The Katinas, the same conversation.
Yeah.
Is that at some point you transition from, well, for lack of a better way of putting it, from Christian music to worship music. And they still are basically the same, but you and I know, and so many of us know, the difference between the artist thing and then getting up and leading a church in worship. Where was that turn for you? Was there a point that you found a place on stage at a church? I know you say you do itinerant ministry, but when was that worship turn for you, and kind of that big turn for you in your life?
So the AACC, which is the American Association of Christian Counselors, Tim Clinton, does these women's conferences called Extraordinary Women, and he does a men's conference, and then he does also conferences for his counselors. And what happened was, I was with New Song in 2006, and we sang at this Opryland Hotel, big 7,000 counselors. And the next year, he wanted me to come back because he heard I had left, and said he wanted me to come back and do a concert for his counselors, where only like 15 people showed up. It was a small group.
Wow.
And it's like, hey, Charles Billingsley does this, but would you be willing to do half of it and lead in worship?
And talk about another,
every once in a while you can do a
talk
song.
about another ex New Song member.
Yeah, there you go, Charles. So Charles was doing it, and then he was doing all the women's conferences. Well, he ended up doing Women of Joy. I ended up taking over Extraordinary Women conferences, and I would lead in worship, but I would also be an artist, which means, you lead in worship, and then maybe you do a really thought-provoking song before the speaker comes up. So I have still been that slash, the worship leader, more 80%, 20% artist. And I still do that even now to this day. If I'm in a church, I'll lead worship, but they may give me a song to connect on some type of level.
Yeah, we call that special music in the Baptist church.
Yes, sir. That's it. Special
or
music.
or the offertory.
Yeah, I probably should have said.
Yeah.
Yeah, the offertory. There you go. So yeah, I've tried to keep that identity because I still feel like there's a place for that, but it's very hard, as you would know, to teach that because it seems like that's old school.
Yeah.
It's very old school. Just do the worship stuff, and typically it's just me and a piano. I don't have a band with me unless I'm with doing the big events, and I'd rather just be at a piano because I feel like they sing a lot better when it's just me and them, and
Hmm.
I'm not trying to overwhelm them. Not
Yeah.
saying that there's anything wrong with having a band. There's not.
No, in
It's
fact,
just
some of
for
the
me when I'm leading.
yeah, I have some smaller churches that I've really become invested in over the last decade or so that I love just taking my acoustic guitar. It's just me and my acoustic going in for Sunday morning, and it's really refreshing for me just to
Yeah,
not be on a
yeah.
click, not have a track behind me. I can go wherever I want to go. If the Holy
Uh,
Spirit says go that way. In fact, there's this little church down in central Oklahoma that I go to quite a bit, and we ended up in a Sunday morning hymn sing. I did a song that reminded us of a bunch of hymns, and I said, "Hey, anybody remember that?" And so, like for the next, I said, "Anybody remember, Sunday night hymn sings?" And everybody started raising their hand, and they just start calling out songs, and it's like those are those things that you don't really get in mega church corporate worship or
yeah,
most churches in America. You're so
yeah. It's more.
programmed, and again, I tell artists all the time and other worship leaders, I'm like, find those places where you can go and just kind of
Yeah.
be under the radar a little bit and be free and explore maybe what God has to say through you. I yeah, I can understand that. Those are some of my favorite moments as a worship leader, as an artist right now.
Yeah, I was up in Michigan, and just small, quick story, but it was a very small church. There was a Christmas concert, and there was, I think, 20 people there. And the guy he had just had a heart attack, and he had just survived it. He was so thankful that I came. It was like 2 days after his heart attack, and they were all sitting there. And I just at the end just started singing. I think, "Oh, come, let us adore Him," or whatever. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most special moments that I can even remember. I didn't even sing. I was just listening to them, and they were singing harmonies, and it was so heartfelt, and it was so spirit led. And I was like, this is why, when we come together and we can have that common bond and we are in unity, and it's not even the greatest voices. It's just voices singing unto the Lord. I mean, do you know the movie Chariots of Fire,
Oh,
where his
absolutely.
sister comes up to him and says, "Back on the mission field," and he said, "I feel God's pleasure when I run."
Yeah.
I've been using this. I feel God's pleasure when I lead God's people in worship.
Mm.
It's just one of my greatest joys and privileges. So
Wow, I'm going to steal
yeah,
that. I love that.
take
That's
it,
really
take
wonderful. Okay, I will. I'll give you credit though.
it.
So I want to move on now to
That's good.
O'Brien version 2. I mean, you know, you've got a next generation that's making their own way in the Christian music
Oh
industry.
yeah, yeah. My son Joseph, he felt like he needed to go on America's Got Talent in 2018, and that's kind of he kind of did that against our will, to be honest with you. And
Oh
he would
wow,
tell you that mom and dad didn't want him to go on that show just because it's not family friendly, and it's just a worldly perspective,
sure.
going into that world. But he still wanted to do it. He felt like he needed to give God a little help with his career, I guess. Um, but all that to say, it kind of gave him this platform. And to be honest, he was being real faithful with, he would do a lot of Instagram lives and stuff. And he
Uh-huh.
was talking about the Lord, and really kind of neat. Him and his brother Timmy. He ended up going to Liberty University. And then you'll think this is funny because he gets a call from Toby Mac. This
Yeah.
is like 2 years ago. He's on the phone with Toby, and he's just talking. And Toby's like, finally, he's like, "Joseph," he says, "I don't call people on the phone unless I want to sign them to a record deal." And Joseph's like, "Oh, yeah." okay. You know, like he just was clueless. You know, I guess he just thought Toby was going to call him on the phone, but he ended up, yeah, signing with Toby's label. It's been on there the last couple of years. But as you know, the industry is, you know, he's looked at my life and go, I want to do what my dad did, you know, and get on tours and do all this stuff, go on the radio. And it's really not like that
No, it
anymore.
doesn't
It's
really
really
work
about
like that
streaming.
anymore now, huh?
So he has a great core of, I think he's got like 500,000 Spotify listeners every
Wow.
month. So
Wow.
he's got a really good core audience, got a lot of followers on Instagram, and he's just trying to, he might have to get another job for a while until this all kind of comes. I mean, I have no idea. My thing in my son's life is, son, are you writing material that's God glorifying? Or don't play the game. Be, you know, just try to be as real as possible, be thankful, be faithful to the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when your career runs dry, if you haven't poured into the church, they're not going to pour into you. And I'm not saying to use the church. I think that's a wrong way to do it. Like, oh, I got to use the church. No, but we know that it's the body of Christ. Christian music should be about the body of Christ. Unfortunately, as you well know, it's not in a lot of ways. It's
Not
very
all the
money
time. Yeah.
driven.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, all that to say, he's doing it. My other son, Timmy, he's also an artist. Timmy O'Brien. He's got cool music, very rhythmic. And then my daughter, she's sung on my projects. She's got an opera voice, but she also can sound like Sarah McLachlan. But she's
Oh,
got
wow.
2 grandkids on the way. You know, this is why we're living in Virginia. We moved from Nashville. We were there 32 years. Moved to Virginia 5 months ago so that we could be close to the grandkids.
Good for you.
But yeah, all my kids are kind of musical, and except my one boy, Mikey. He's got his own Overthrow Disc Golf. Is a disc golf channel on YouTube.
No way.
Ever thought you could make a living?
Wow. That's all
Yeah,
over the map,
he's
man.
just got this channel.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so he's just kind of doing his own thing on there. But
so
did you ever
encourage your kid? Did you encourage your kids or discourage them from chasing the music industry kind of thing?
I hate to say it, I only encouraged Joseph. I did not encourage Mikey, and Mikey kind of wanted to. He really could have been a worship leader and been fine. And then I kind of discouraged Timmy, but then all of a sudden I started listening to Timmy's stuff, and I'm like, okay, Timmy, he's very gifted. So I started pouring into him too, but he's different. He's not like Joseph. And so they got their own little music thing going on. And then my daughter really just wants to be a stay-at-home mom and take care of the kiddos. So I'm not going to try to, I just have her every once in a while come out and sing with me. So.
And do you have
you're right.
Do you have just the 2 grandkids now?
So 2 and then 1 on the way right now.
And
so I'll have 3.
Isn't that the best life? Yeah, I've got 5.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something special, man.
It really
is.
You
know, you can try to tell people about it, but it always falls flat, and they always think, "Oh man, you're whatever." So I don't even try to even talk about it that much.
Yeah,
but yeah,
man.
Since
we can talk about it. We can talk about it. We can brag about our grandkids. They're the best. It's God's reward for making it through as parents, and keeping not completely falling apart, but oh yeah, the grandkids are the best. Yeah,
that's good.
Well, what's on the horizon for you? Tell me what's happening, in the near future. What projects are you working on? What can we look forward
to? I'm working. I've written like 14 instrumental songs. I've always, people ask me what I listen to when I'm in the car. A lot of times I'm listening to movie themes. Like Forrest Gump, a lot of the music stuff that you hear, piano, and so I've written a lot of very melodic melodies that I want to put together, because I've had a lot of people ask me, why don't you do an instrumental record? So I've got all the songs, I just need to do it. And then I also really would love to do more of a traditional worship project, probably more hymns. And there's a new song, I'm sure you've heard of it. It's called His Mercy is More.
Oh yeah.
By Matt Papa and
Matt Boswell.
Matt Boswell.
Yeah.
And so doing some kind of some of those kinds of songs that I lead a lot already. And so I want to do that project too. So those two are in the future, Lord willing, and get it out there and just continue doing this as long as the Lord allow me. I remember asking Steve Green that very question because he's still doing it, just not as much. But he says, yeah, I mean, he's wanting now to spend more time with his grandkids, so he's going back and forth from Atlanta to Missouri or whatever it is, and I'm sure I'll slow down, but right now it just seems like I'm getting more opportunities to minister, and so I'll just keep on doing it until he says no more.